We're going to get up and running in just a minute here. I am now kind of broadcasting out to Twitter that we're going to be getting started in just a couple seconds. We're going to start out with Windows Central, actually doing some performance testing. You can actually see how we do performance analysis on the website using the F12 dev tools inside of Edge. So give me just one moment and we'll be up and running. Okay. All right, so that tweet is out. I think it's probably a good time as ever to get started on this. So I'm going to start my instance of Notepad so I can keep track of when it is we're getting started and jumping from topic to topic. So it'll be 3 minutes started. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to round 2. So if you were here this morning for the first 3 hours of this broadcast, my name is Jonathan Sampson. I'm a program manager on the Microsoft Edge team, and every Saturday I come in to spend my time with you beautiful people. And we're going to just work through some problems. We're going to figure out how to fix the web. We're going to file bugs. We're going to find out what makes things slow and what makes things break. We're going to start the second round of debugging today with Windows Central. So windowscentral.com is a really cool site. I definitely encourage people to visit it if you are kind of excited about the Microsoft culture, excited about what goes on around here. They usually have a pretty decent coverage of what's going on. So one of the things, though, that we often hear is that the Windows Central site can be a bit slow in Microsoft Edge. And I believe I have experienced this personally a couple of times. So what we're going to do today, James Smith from Scotland, hello. We are going to start out by doing a performance analysis, and that sounds really complicated, sounds really mystic and stuff, but you don't have to crawl to the top of a mountain and stare into your navel for 6 months in order to understand this. This is really, really basic stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the in situ browser tools. So inside of every web browser pretty much today are a series and set of tools that can help you do various things. One of those things is test the performance or the readiness and response rate and the general behavior of a website in a really, really easy way. And so we're going to get started with Windows Central today. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can jump back into my remote machine. I hope it looks like the connection has dropped on it, so I'm going to have to open that back up. And we'll see if we can get up and running. Okay. Still need to figure out why at times my machine does not let me hit the Windows key and then just start typing, because that's like the number one way that I search for anything. I hit the Windows key and then I just start typing. And for some reason it's not working for me right now. Let me try just clicking on Cortana. That's not working either. This happens every now and then whenever I'm broadcasting, and it's odd because usually whenever you run into issues like this, we just get frustrated. We want to throw up our hands and say this is terrible. Like computers are crap. Like I shouldn't do this. This is just horrible. But in reality, like what we want to do is try and identify like kind of what correlates with the issues that we're facing. And so in this case, I notice that I never have this problem unless I'm broadcasting. Like I push the Windows key and I type the word remote and nothing happens. I notice that only happens when I'm using this XSplit application. Could have something, I don't know if it has anything to do with the video codec, or if it's something to do with the application stealing focus, or what it is. To be quite honest, as a web developer, once you get out into the space of the operating system, everything becomes just a large black box to me. And so all I can do as a web developer is try and look for patterns. And I have the pattern that whenever I'm running this application, more often than not, I'm not able to search for things by just hitting the Windows key and then typing remote. And so at times it will start working. So let me try and minimize this real quick. Yeah, I'm still not able to get it. Let me try and minimize more stuff. Yep, that's still not working for me. So let's see here. Let me see if I can. I'm trying to think of another way. What is the through remote application through task manager? That's what I need to find out, is what the process, or the executable is rather, to fire up remote desktop connection through task manager. Once I find that out, then I can just run it from the run dialog. So actually sometimes it just starts working for me too, although it's not doing it right now. It was one of my recent ones, so it should be here. Come on, computer. I'm not computering too well right now. Okay, I'm a PQRS. Where is this? Where's remote? Oh, come on. This is wonderful. Why is this not working? Goodness. Let's see. Got to figure out what it is about this arrangement of applications. Is it MSTSC? Is that it? It is. Thank you very, very much. Who said that? Rio Mare. Thank you very much. That is exactly what I was looking for. So, see if I can connect now, and I will get into my other device. Have to remember that. What's Microsoft something? TSC. I would expect it to say like remote or something in the name. All right, there we go. So now I am so Extra Mania Gamer is asking what was the issue. The issue is, for some reason, whenever I'm broadcasting, whenever I'm using XSplit, I can't just hit the normal way that I find applications on my machine. I've been doing this since I think Vista, whenever they added it, was you just hit the Windows key and then you start typing the name of the application. But there's something odd about whenever I'm running XSplit on my machine, because I can hit the Windows key and I start to type, but none of those keystrokes are actually being captured. And so it doesn't trigger the Cortana search functionality or anything. It just simply doesn't work for me. So I'm not quite sure what exactly is causing that. But you know, I am able to hit run and everything, and as long as I know the actual executable name, I can fire up a remote desktop connection. And so thank you to Rio earlier who provided that for me. It's exactly what I was looking for. So thank you. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to start basically doing performance analysis on WindowsCentral.com. So we are at 11:05. So getting started for real this time. And we're going to start the actual performance analysis on Windows Central. So I'm going to share my desktop. Let me open up a browser here. I have the search button on my taskbar, actually. It is down there, but clicking it doesn't do anything. So, you know, I hover over it and it's like, yeah, ask me anything, but it doesn't actually work for me whenever I'm running XSplit for some reason. So I have to figure out what's happening between XSplit and the OS that causes that to stop working for me. Let's see here. So I'm going to jump in and we're going to share my screen once I get to I'll start out on Stack Overflow again like I did before. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I don't know what causes that, but it's all right. We'll figure it out. So here we are inside just an instance of Edge, and we're looking at Stack Overflow right now. What I want to do, though, is I actually want to move over and look at Windows Central. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start out by just going to Windows Central. And we're going to see what the experience is like just navigating there. So it might be a little choppy because I happen to be on a different machine. So I'm remoted into this machine. I can scroll down. Seems to be okay for me right now. Let's see, I'll click on one of these. So let's click on a Surface Pro 3 patch for its battery drain bug is in testing. That's right, I think I saw Panos Panay tweet about that. So I'm starting to feel some sluggishness. Like I don't know if it's whenever the ads are being loaded in over here or what that is, but it's not too terribly bad right now. Some comments down there. Let's see if we can just go to best laptops and see what this is. So Steve Pell says that WinBeta is slower than this one, but we'll definitely check them out. We'll check out both of them if we have time. So one thing to always look for is up here in the title. Right now, you notice the text is white on dark. If I were to switch the theme over and we were to go with light theme, then it's going to be dark on light. But you want to watch for whenever that goes dim, because that usually means there's a long-running script. There's actually something that is locking up the UI thread of the page, and it's usually indicated that the browser will notify you that that's happening by changing the color of the title text, as well as appending not responding to the end of it in parentheses. And so we're going to just be kind of watching that as we're scrolling down here. I do not know about ownership, so Extra Mania Gamers asking if they're owned by the same company. I have no idea. So everything seems to be working fairly well. This may be one of those issues where when you go to the site, you have to really kind of browse around for 10 to 15 minutes or so. Let's see if we can jump back on Windows Central homepage. And we'll just look at this Windows 10 Mobile Anniversary Update hands-on. Oh, now you notice the title did go dim there for just a second. So I'm clicking on this link, and that went dim. I don't know if that was a direct result of the click or if that was something that just happened in parallel to the click. So there's that causation and correlation. It's dim again. So standing that up, there's some type of script that just ran that was fairly heavy. And there's another one right there. So you notice, and this one is actually staying locked up for quite a while. So this is a really kind of beastly script. And we just saw an ad pop in. So that may suggest that there's a relationship between the script that was just running and the ad that just popped in the lower right. So now that the ads are in, though, it seems like everything is really smooth. So probably what I'm going to do now is, that scenario right there, I want to run through that again just to see if it reproduces each time I click into that page. So you remember we were here on the home page. We clicked on this link right here. the second page started loading up. Now it's going to be cached this time, so I may want to delete my cache. But you'll notice it's locked up right now. Now it's free. There's an ad that just popped in. But we do see it lock up right there. And so presumably it's actually locked up right now again. So there's some type of script that is going wild right there. Okay, now you're going to notice whenever it's locked up like this, you can still browse up and down. So the actual responsiveness of the page is not going to be impacted. And that's because of independent scrolling. Some work that we did recently in the browser such that if you scroll with your finger or your trackpad, you can continue to scroll even when the page is completely locked up. So if you're reading an article or something like this, right now I'm just scrolling with my finger, you can continue to do that. Right now the mouse wheel is not tied into that same system, so you won't be able to scroll with the mouse wheel, but you can use your trackpad and you can use your fingers and stylus and stuff like that and continue to scroll even when the browser is completely locked up for you. So let's go ahead and jump in, and we're going to look at this particular scenario. So we've done this twice now. We notice that going from the home page into this article results in a couple hangs at the top real quick. And so let's jump back to the home page. And I'm assuming that same rule is going to apply for any one of these top items that we click on. Chances are good they're sharing the same template. They have the same type of ad script being loaded in. And so it's very likely that whatever we experience on one, we're going to experience on the other one. Let's open up our F12 developer tools. And let's see, I can jump out of the DOM Explorer. This is going to be the default view that it throws you into is the DOM Explorer, which shows you the document object model, shows you the nested hierarchy of elements on the page. And so it starts with the root element way out here. Immediately inside the root element, you have two elements, the head and the body. Immediately inside the body, you have all of these other top level elements. And so we'll probably look at that another time, but right now we're going to jump over to the performance tab. Down here at this bottom, if you have this console, you can just toggle it off by clicking this button right here. And it looks like it's freezing up for me. Come on, remote desktop. Bear with me. Yep, it looks like I don't know if it's Explorer or what this is, but it definitely appears to have frozen up on me, the DevTools. So we're over here. There we go. Okay. Now they've unlocked themselves. Okay. So you notice once we're inside the Performance tab, we actually have this link text right here. It's actually a button to start profiling to begin a performance session. And so we're going to start profiling. And once this starts, you notice the page is still kind of locking up back there. So I don't even think we need to navigate away. Let's just let this profile for a second. I'm watching that address bar up there, just above the address bar where the title of the tab is. And right now it's solid white. So I want to wait until it goes dim again so that we can record all of the scripts and all the methods that were actually invoked during that time. So it's still solid white. I might move my mouse around out here just for a second. And we're going to give that just probably another 10 seconds or so to see if that goes dim. So far, nothing. Now watch, just the moment I stop doing this performance recording, it's going to go dim. I guarantee it. That's just how it works. So we're going to start to analyze the collected data. And we can look at that. See, it. Oh my goodness. Computer, why? Computer, why? Okay. Wow, so if you look at this, this is, what was this? Roughly a minute or so of recording of WindowsCentral.com. And so you're going to notice immediately inside there are categories to the different types of bars that you're going to find. So a blue bar means something was loading. A red bar means script is running. The yellow one is garbage collection. So as JavaScript uses references and stops using references whenever things are basically expired and no longer needed, there's an engine that comes by that will actually free up that memory. So that's the garbage collection, GC. There's a very, very little time spent on styling. So that would be like CSS and setting things up. And that's expected because we started this recording after the page was already stood up. And so really everything is going to be done with the exception of scripting and any UI related stuff that results from scripting or maybe interactions with the page. So you're going to notice immediately on the left side here, we can see that 47% of this time was spent on timers. 42% was just idle, so doing nothing. But there's something right inside here. You'll notice the frames per second, they really dip down right here. And we can kind of jump in and see what is causing that. So there's definitely scripts running non-stop all the way through. If we wanted to, what we could do is we'll clear out that zoom. We'll jump over to the JavaScript call stacks. That's going to load up all of the functions that were actually being called and fired in JavaScript, as well as the files from which they originate and the amount of time that they take. So their exclusive time, which is the amount of time that just that function takes, and the inclusive time, which is how much time that function and all functions called by it take. So if we look at this, if we look at the inclusive CPU usage, there are two functions in particular coming from this MDN Rich Media ad site that both ran for 3,000, about 3.5 seconds each. So that's 7 seconds of just constant churning, which doesn't sound like much, but that could really, cause some serious hiccups in your kind of fluidity of scrolling and stuff. Let's jump in and just look at one of these though. Let's see. We have this handle timeout. So we have this first handle timeout, which took about, inclusively, it took about 3.5 seconds. The second one also took about 3.5 seconds. The third one took about 1.5 seconds. And then we start to have like these half-second runs where it's like 0.7 of a second, 0.6 of a second, almost half a second. And all of these look like they are, with the exception of this one, this NR wrapper, the other top ones look like they're directly ad related. So this isn't even really a problem for Windows Central at this point. What we're seeing is the likelihood that these ad networks are actually not serving up super optimized JavaScript, or to be entirely fair, that Edge is not working well with this particular scripting patterns. And so ideally in this case, we do want to make sure that we are working well with JavaScript that exists on the web. But advertisers probably want to make sure that their code works really well and quick in all browsers as well, so that you get more conversions, you make more money. Let's look at this first timeout. So you notice immediately inside here, most of the time, again, there was only 3 seconds or 3 milliseconds that was actually spent only in the handle timeout function. The rest of the time was spent in functions invoked by handle timeout. So if we expand this, what we now see is that handle timeout causes ttick, tsetup tick, ttick simple, ttick, tsetup tick, tsetup tick simple. So it calls all of these, but these are not very heavy. It's this first ttick right here. You'll notice this one takes 17 milliseconds, but it causes a chain reaction of additional functions that take 3.4 seconds. So we'll open that up as well. You notice most of the time in there is spent here. So this particular function, it calls e.hasEventListener. That only takes 18 milliseconds. It doesn't call any of the additional functions, because you notice the exclusive CPU time, which is the time spent inside that function, is the same as the inclusive CPU time, which is the time spent in the chain reaction caused by that function. And again, if this is not at all clear, just let me know. I can stop and we can try and maybe explain any one of these parts a little more thoroughly. And as well, if my screen is not easy to see, switch to the HD broadcast and it should be better. I can probably increase my zoom a little bit, but again, I'm going through a remote desktop connection and I might run into some issues with the layout of the DevTools whenever I do that. So just let me know and I'm more than happy to try and accommodate. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to jump down. So this is the function that actually has the lion's share of time spent on it. So we'll expand that out. eDispatch event, we'll expand that out. Handle event is the heavy one. So we just keep kind of going down to the heavier and heavier ones. And now you notice we're inside this handle event. There's an update, it gets context. Now we're looking at DOM operations right inside here. So we have, looks like we're setting the transformation of something. So we're actually doing some, the reason why we're starting to see that this takes such a long time to do is because this is actually updating the UI of the page. You'll notice we're setting the transformation of something. We're setting the width. And then we're doing this dispatch event, update context. All these are still relatively light. You have a tick event here, which is about 1/4 of a second. It's not too bad. But once we get down to this e.draw, that's the function that has taken, at this level, all of the actual time. So we'll expand that out. E.draw seems to be recursive to some degree because you notice we're looking at it right here. It calls save, restore, e-update context, e.draw. It calls e.draw again. So we'll jump inside there. You'll notice again we're dealing with yet another layer of repetition here. So we have e.draw calling restore, update timeline, and we get down to this 2796 again where it calls e.draw once more. Again, all that time is spent inside e.draw. We look at another level, e.draw. And so we're really seeing a function that just keeps calling itself over and over and over. This is the type of stuff you see with things that cause like a waterfall effect of rendering. So if you have components inside components inside components inside components, you'll call the render method on the outermost component, and then it'll call the render method on the innermost component, which will call the render methods on its innermost component, which just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper until you get to the very bottom when the item actually renders and returns its rendered self, and then the parent gets to render itself and return it, and the grandparent gets to render itself and return it, and the great-grandparent, which is probably the element that we're first dealing with, finally gets to render itself. And so you'll see those, sequentially, those rapid calls to the same method sometimes, depending on what it is. And so we can actually, depending on how well versed you are in certain JavaScript frameworks, you'll see methods like this: update context, e.draw, restore, update timeline, and you might even be able to pick out exactly what framework they're using sometimes. So let's jump into this layer of e.draw again. So now you notice we're down to this part where we have 393 milliseconds spent on drawing, 634 on update context, another 617 on drawing, another 518 on drawing. So now we're at a few different items that basically split up that time spent on drawing. So let's look into the heaviest one, which is going to be this, actually update context. And clip is where the vast majority of time was spent there. And so by clip, I'm assuming that is reference to the CSS functionality to clip. I'm not entirely sure here. One thing that you can do, though, is we could jump into the debugger and look up update context to see what exactly that does. So let's do that real quick. We'll jump over to the debugger, and we'll look up update context. And it looks like it has found the update context method for us. I will try to, let me try to see if I can zoom in just a little bit on this, and I apologize if the layout gets a little wonky. Okay, so here is update context. We can see what it's doing. So it takes the context of the object, assigns it to I.mask, I_props matrix. And there's S graphics. Graphics is empty. Get matrix. I'm not entirely sure what it is we're looking at here. This might be SVG. It looks a bit like SVG, actually. Let me do a quick search on a couple of these methods, and we'll just see kind of what they pull up. Alessandro Spiso says, "Why aren't you a C# guy?" I am not a C. I'm not. Yeah, I've done some .NET, but I would not consider myself a C# guy. I did use VB.NET before I got into C# though. Let's see here. Oh, okay, so we're going to look up some of these methods real quick. So right now I'm looking at my screen. I see there's this graphics is empty. So I'm going to see graphics is empty and see if that pulls up something. Android.graphics.path is empty. Region that is empty. This is in system drawing on MSDN. Let's see, get matrix and transform. It's tough to see what this is. Let me scroll up real quick and see if we can tell what exactly we might be messing with. Create.js. Let me look at that real quick. So Create.js is to make anything editable. Let's look at looking for right now some of the documentation for this. So they're on GitHub. I love it when an application or a utility is on GitHub. So on GitHub, I'm going to go ahead and I'll search this repository just for one of those methods. So what were we looking at? We were looking at, actually, so that might be a canvas element. So var I is create.js, create canvas. Otherwise, document create element canvas. That might be what we're looking at is the canvas element, but I don't think. So I.mask. Let me look here. If I were to create just a canvas element, I don't know that it has a mask property. And so the way I would probably check this out real quick is I'm going to do mask in document.create element canvas. Yeah, I didn't think there was a mask property in a created canvas element unless it's the context. So if we do var c equals document.create element canvas, we should look at C. We see a canvas, and we do var d equals c.get context. We'll get the 2D context of that. And there is no d.mask. There is not a d.graphics either. So yeah, I'm curious what this this code that we're looking at. Maybe it's just a custom library or something that they have in place here. Snap to pixel enabled. I snap to pixel. Let me look up that real quick and see if that helps out. Doesn't appear to be part of Create.js. So let's look at snap to, what are we looking at? Pixel enabled. Just by doing a search, okay, so here we go. We're actually looking at Easel. So this looks like it brought up, so you have to find out what these damn providers mess up in their heads. So what I'm trying to find out is basically like, what is this portion? So we just spent some time inside the performance area, and you notice what we wound up with was this series of calls to draw that are really kind of eating a lot of time on the UI thread. And so what I want to find out now is, is this the case with, well, first I want to find out what do these belong to, what library, what framework. It looks like right now that these belong to a framework called EaselJS. And so just by doing a quick search, I found some of the properties inside there. We should do a quick search on one of the more unique properties, and it has brought up definitely this this framework or this utility called EaselJS. I've heard of this before. Okay, so it's a JavaScript library that makes working with HTML5 canvas element easy, useful for creating games, generative art, and other highly graphical experiences. And I think if we looked at the page here, something on here is going to be that that highly graphical experience that they are built for. And so we should be able to actually test. So at this point, like, I could start to make EaselJS part of a test framework, essentially. So is this a problem with Edge or Windows Central scripting? It's kind of hard to say right now. I don't think it is Windows Central. It's manifested on Windows Central, but that's only because they're using an ad network, like literally every other website on the internet. What this is potentially some code inside Easel that simply doesn't run very well in Edge. So we maybe need to look at that and test more thoroughly against it and see if we need to identify where the bottlenecks are and try to improve our performance a bit. Or it could be code inside Easel that just doesn't run very well in any browser. And so we need to consider seeing if we can help improve that. It's probably in this case the former. Presumably the developers of Easel, the people who contribute to the project, they do test in at least one browser, and presumably that's they've found that they can get it working fairly well in that browser. But this is the importance of testing across multiple platforms. So right now I'm kind of just looking at the Easel site. It looks pretty cool, actually. There's a little game on there. I can make this guy jump. It's a lot of fun. It's like a side scroller. Boing, boing, boing. This is awesome. Okay, I'm getting distracted. I want to look at their docs real quick. Oh, this is cool. This is Grant Skinner. Created by Grant Skinner. Okay, cool, yeah. And I'm going to look at the... So that does look like, those do look like methods on the whatever the instance of this object is. If you create like an easel or something, you create a stage, it looks like maybe the stage itself actually has, or that's actually, so circle.graphics, that actually might be a shape. So an easel looks like they have this concept of shapes, and so you can create a stage, and then from your stage you can create shapes. And shapes actually have that graphics property on them that have methods like begin, fill, and draw circle. So what I want to look at is the shape object. I want to look at that graphics property. Let's see, and that is right there. In graphics, I want to see what they actually enumerate on this. So they have a draw method. Let's go back and look at our code real quick. Well, there's the draw method that we're actually seeing. And what draw does, it says if this display object draw context, ignore cache, return true, return this graphics draw. So you can see that it is a recursive function right there. It will call itself all the way down as far as it needs to start to render those elements upward for the canvas to display them. So what we need to do is probably actually take Easel, create some examples of it, actually build out a few demos and do some performance testing against that, because it seems like that might be one of the issues that's actually causing Windows Central to be a bit delayed inside Microsoft Edge. It's not Windows Central necessarily. It looks like in this case that the heaviest stuff on here is just EaselJS. And so it's definitely something to look into. I might ping John David Dalton or somebody later on who works a lot in this space to see if how we ought to pursue this, because it definitely seems like something we ought to give some consideration to. Because you notice all of this time, this handle timeouts, this is all spent nearly like 30 or so, like greater than 30% of this page time is spent just on those two methods, or inside that one method being called a couple different times. So that's quite beastly. Yeah. So we have a pretty solid idea of what's going on there. I'm going to go ahead and update my notes real quick. And so this says at 40 minutes, we identified that EaselJS used the most resources in a 1-minute window. Okay, so the next thing, let's see, we now have, so EaselJS is going to be on the radar from this point forward to make sure that we're actually, looking at this a little more closely to see if, in this case, I might just try and identify the actual, component, the portion of Windows Central that is running this code, because, I could stand up my own examples of, examples using EaselJS, or I can go through their demos, but I may not actually find something that is, similar in size and complexity as whatever it is running on Windows Central right now. So we might have to look back into that here in just a bit to see if we can identify what specifically on there is causing that issue. So that's Windows Central. We did a performance kind of analysis of that. We can see where the heavy things are. One thing that you can do, and you remember this from the first debugging session today if you were actually tuned in, is capture some performance data through the feedback hub. I did that earlier. Might actually do that again here. And I would definitely encourage anybody out there that if you run into issues with Windows Central, load up the page. Actually identify what your scenario is first. So in this case, I had a couple different scenarios looking at. One of them was clicking a link, going to the next page, and then there were some hangs on that second page. First one was just sitting on the home page. There was a hang, then about 20 seconds or so of nothing, or a minute or whatever it was, and then another small hang. And so what you want to do is identify your scenario first. Go to the feedback hub. Marvin Danig, if you're listening, go ahead and share your question in the chat, and we'll examine it. What you want to do is then go to the feedback hub. Search for something for Windows Central. There's likely going to be something there. If I just do a really quick search myself, feedback hub, and I'll look up Windows Central. And if I do that search, yep, so there are several items on here already for Windows Central. So if you are watching right now and you have experienced, the latency on Windows Central, please go to the feedback hub, pick one of those, the one that more accurately represents the scenario that you've been impacted by, and do what we did before, where you go down, you click on, feedback details, and like I'll just pull up one right here that I'm gonna, I went to Windows Central did not launch. That's probably not the one that we want because Windows Central does launch for us. Let me try a different one. Windows Central keeps freezing. How about that? So I'm at Windows Central keeps freezing. Let me copy this link real quick, and I'll paste it into the chat. And let's just really fill this thing up with some traces. So I'm going to go and create. What was that URL that actually lets you create? Here it is, feedbackhub.link. And let's see. I'm going to paste this link into the chat window. So go ahead and navigate to this URL that's in the chat right there. That should take you to the feedback item that I was just referring to for the, what was it? The Windows Central, but this one is the Windows Central keeps freezing. Whenever you get there, go and visit the add feedback details. I'll pull it up here on my screen as well. So I'll open this up. This is going to invoke the feedback hub. And let me share my my screen real quick. So this is where we're at. We're looking at this particular item right here. You notice it's been upvoted 6 times. So go ahead and click on Add Feedback Details. And this is where you want to kind of select what the issue is. So this is a performance issue. And then just hit Begin Monitoring and navigate to the page, or with the page open, just click Begin Monitoring and let it sit for 10 seconds or 20 seconds or a minute, preferably, and then stop monitoring, submit it, and upvote it. This would be incredibly helpful. As well as that, put a comment down below and let people know exactly what it is you're seeing. So try to be as descriptive as possible without being too verbose. So keep it about tweet length if you can, so 140 characters or less. But just really kind of focus on making it concise and lean with the description, and that should be super helpful. So if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. That way we can get the number of instances of this up as well. I keep mentioning that number of instances. I mentioned it in the first broadcast, and I mentioned it again on this one. That is a very important metric. When one person observes something out in the wild, it could be a fluke. It could be any number of things. When multiple people start to observe it, that's when things start to become really important for us, and we need to really start to pay very close attention to it. And so during these weekend hackathon, debugging sessions, you and I are actually confirming that these issues exist. And when we confirm that, we really want to make sure that the numbers on these items reflect that certainty. So if you can right now, click on the link over here inside the chat window. Well, it's not there anymore. I changed the view. But if you can go ahead and click on that link. Let's see, we'll do that. We'll move this over here and increase the size of that. And there we go. So what is that like? That's going to be like up here or so? I don't know. We'll see. Go ahead and click on that link and actually upvote it. If you can submit a trace with the monitoring tool, please do so. That would be greatly appreciated. So let's look at, let's see here. Let me go ahead and respond to Marvin Danig's question. So this is Marvin Danig on Twitter says, I have a tricky JavaScript issue to tackle. Would you be interested? So just letting them know that I would be happy to try, inviting them to join the chat here, and we can kind of step over and look at that. So WinBeta is the other one. Let's jump over. Again, the same kind of process applies to WinBeta too. Any slow site, when you come across them, please consider actually jumping into the feedback hub, looking for similar reports, and submitting a small trace using that begin monitoring functionality. So I'm going to jump over and we'll actually start to look at WinBeta real quick. So we're at 49 minutes. We're going to start this one at the 50-minute mark. winbeta.org, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so that tweet is out. I'm actually just kind of announcing that whenever we're going to switch to a new item, I'm going to tweet it out to everyone so they can kind of see what's going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at winbeta.org. So we just got done looking at Windows Central. It's totally blanking on me there for a second. If you want to see that, you can go back to the 11-minute mark, 11 minutes and 5 seconds, and that should be around the time we started with Windows Central. But let's go ahead and look at WinBeta and see what we can find there. So on the Windows Central site, what we actually found was just scripts actively running, just nonstop, and it looked like a lot of that time was spent inside of a framework called EaselJS, doing some recursive drawing, which is usually, I'm assuming, built for gaming and stuff like that, but it might be used for something a little bit different on there, possibly inside some ads or something. So we're going to jump in and we're going to look at winbeta.org right now, and I'm going to keep the feedback hub open just because we might actually want to come back to that. So in this case, let's jump, let's do it over here. So let me jump back into my remote desktop connection. We'll zoom out our dev tools. And let's go ahead and, I might actually need to zoom those in just a little bit. It's a bit too small. There we go. All right. So we're going to go and check out winbeta.org. Okay, so here we are. We've got the front page loading in. I don't believe I have any... Yep, no extensions installed on this machine, so no ad blockers, nothing like that. No LastPass, nothing injecting script into the page. Now again, we're going to watch the top of the browser where that tab is. We want to see if that stays nice and illuminated or if it goes dim. If it goes dim, that means there's a long-running script, something really heavy on the page. And on the last page, Windows Central, that was more than likely, we saw a couple of those, and we wound up seeing inside the performance logs a couple really heavy calls to recursive, draw methods. And so that's something we want to be looking out for here as well. I haven't actually noticed that yet. So we might see slightly better performance here. Hey, Satya, happy birthday. 49. The guy doesn't look a day over 30. Let's see. Okay, we're going to just keep scrolling down. It seems like everything's working out fairly well for me right now. No real big hangs. I haven't seen the title, go dim or anything. Again, I can scroll with my finger, and that's always something to remember. Just in case you do see a hang, because of independent scrolling, you can still scroll with your finger. You can't scroll with the same liberty with your mouse, but with your finger and your trackpad, you can still do that. So click Windows 10, I am told. Let's see. So Windows 10, we're talking about this giant article right here? Or are we talking about the small link right there? So I'm going to let Steve tell me which one of those I should click. And what we're going to do before I click that, will mouse scrolling ever get independent scrolling? Yeah, I'm not really quite sure. I suspect that is going to come in the future. I can't make any promises. It is a separate, path altogether. And so, small on black tab. Oh, I see. Windows 10 on here. Okay. And so, I'm not quite sure if and when the mouse will get that. But definitely, if it's something that you run into a bunch, definitely send us that feedback. Let us know if the mouse needs to have it. And if we get the number of instances high enough, then we'll definitely, have more motivation for getting that work done. So I'm going to click this the small Windows 10 link right here, per Steve Pell's directions, and we'll see if this results in some nasty hangs. So far, so good. We have ads loading in, but they haven't caused the title bar to go gray. Looks like everything is working well for me right now. There's Donna. Hi, Donna. Okay, let's go up again. Let's see. That's an awesome commercial, by the way. So far, nothing's happening. Like, the page is working really well for me. That doesn't mean that there's not something churning in the background that is right on the verge of, just pushing the whole browser into non-responsiveness. And so what we can do is we can actually still, just do a quick performance analysis, see what scripts are running, and if there's something that is kind of running hot, then I can understand how some machines that might be a bit too much. Now, one thing I have to keep in mind is that I'm actually on a Surface Book i7. That's not the same machine everyone else is on. So while one particular chain of operations may not cause problems for my machine, it's not always the case with everyone else's machine. So we have to understand that we live in a world with a diverse array of different devices and machines and memory and stuff. So let's go ahead and still do a quick performance analysis here. So I still have the old data in here. This is from Windows Central. I'm going to go ahead and just press play. This is going to start a new profiling session. And I'll click to navigate to the home page again. And we'll just let this run for about 10 or 15 seconds, and then we'll stop it and see what's going on. So you see the title bar just kind of faded for a split second there, and then it came back. So I expect to see something in there for that. Let's go ahead and stop the report. Analyzing the collected data. And here we go. So you notice different from Windows Central, there's actually a couple different things that are very different here. Windows Central actually had really heavy script running, but the frames per second stayed high. Here we actually have the frames per second dropping dramatically, which means something is really like, pushing items to the UI thread, pushing things to the screen. And so while this is finishing up the analysis, you notice there are small triangles across the top of the screen. So these triangles are kind of event lifecycle marks, app lifecycle marks actually, and or diamonds rather, not triangles. Yeah, I've got to get my shapes right. If Anna is in here, she's probably just about clawed her eyes out at someone calling these triangles. Let's see. So let's go ahead and just jump in real quick, and we'll look and see what's running, the heaviest inside here. We can look at the timeline. So you notice each one of these represents some type of aspect. So this is navigation. There's a storage frame here. We have, looks like this one is DOM content loaded. That means all of the actual HTML elements in the DOM has been constructed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all the images are visible or anything. Just means the container for the image is there. Now the DOM content loaded. If you see multiple of those, then that usually means you have multiple documents, which means you usually have multiple frames. Frames or iframes, yeah. Here's a load event. So this is usually whenever images are fired or images have successfully loaded. The document too will have a loaded event as well. And so once all of the images have been loaded, the actual document itself will have a loaded event fired. And so all of these things are going to show us the full app life cycle of this page. And so what I want to do is I want to come in right here. I want to inspect why the visual throughput, the frames per second, they've been at 60 all the way over here, 60 frames per second. That means we're able to update the screen very rapidly. We can refresh the page really rapidly. But once we get here, we have a couple small dips. You can see those. If I were to zoom in just a little bit, you notice there's a slightly lengthy paint call right here. And a bit further down, it seems like there's a little bit of a heavy timer right here. So that's using 9.7 milliseconds on this. So let's go ahead and we'll jump in. We'll look at this region right here too. So remember, green is styling, blue is loading. So you can see we actually have some requests here. This is for a JavaScript file. We have a CSS parsing. So we've actually downloaded a CSS file. We're now parsing the contents of it to figure out what we need to do with it. We have HTML parsing. That invoked a couple more examples of CSS parsing. So you notice this is if we wind up parsing like an iframe or something like that, that iframe might wind up making calls to CSS files which require parsing as well. And so that's why we're seeing those nested inside this one. Probably see that here as well. So there was HTML parsing, and then some garbage collection took place. We have a bunch of requests down here. So whenever you see a bunch of these parallel requests as well, the browser typically will make about 6 or so parallel requests to the server per domain, or per origin, I believe. It might be origin or domain. I'm not quite sure with that particular rule. But what happens is, sometimes websites will have different subdomains, and that way they can get more than 6 concurrent requests to different resources loading at the same time. But that's all going to be really kind of deprecated or obsolete with HTTP2, which is going to open up like a single connection pipeline that you can then send all of this stuff back and forth without having to stand up and establish new connections to the server. So let's go down a little bit more. We can see there's a giant paint right here, 3000 by 1786 pixels. This parsing right here of HTML took 161.5 milliseconds. So, that's why. The HTML itself contained a script element that is, so that's all jQuery. So we parsed some HTML, we found a script element pointing to jQuery, and then jQuery, obviously this portion inside here, jQuery starts to do a bunch of stuff with the DOM. And generally what jQuery is doing is it's setting up a bunch of tests. So jQuery wants to, once it's created, it wants to create a bunch of tests to figure out what it needs to do with this browser moving forward. And so they get all of that out of the way at the very beginning by creating elements, setting values on top of them, trying to access them, looking at the computed styles and stuff. I don't know that they actually look at computed styles, but they do a lot of DOM experimentation whenever it's stood up. So that's why we see 170 or so milliseconds, 165 or so milliseconds being spent on jQuery. We have another HTML parsing right here. This is 147. This is script evaluation again. It looks like lazy ad loader. So this is going to be an ad framework that is then being loaded. The ad framework, you'll notice it creates an element. It sets the inner HTML a couple times, winds up causing a style calculation on a div. If we wanted to, we could actually take this and we could show in the DOM Explorer that particular div. Looks like it might be detached from the DOM at this point, but at one point in time there was a div over here that we could have actually dropped in and looked at. So we also have another set inner HTML, which resulted in a style calculation. So for instance, the HTML, the root element, we could jump over and show that. Actually, am I looking? I might even not be looking at the this is WinBeta. Okay, I might be looking at a totally different kind of session here. But we can scroll down. Let's look at, I want to look at a couple more areas right here. So this little nub, you see the frame rate starts to come back up again. And it, here we go with secure pub ads.doubleclick.net. So this is another ad here that's taking quite a while. If we were to expand out the left side of this, that ad right there, just the request for it took 300 milliseconds. This one here took 120 milliseconds to parse this HTML. That resulted in the script evaluation. Okay, so, and then we took basically that script evaluation. Looks like that might have invoked yet another request to the server. So there's a whole lot of, requests going back and forth to the server, and they're fairly heavy for ads. So right around here, it just kind of goes radio silence, though. Let's see if we can select that portion. Get myself a drink as well. Okay, so we've actually selected that portion. Notice there's like literally nothing happening right here. No functions, nothing. It's just radio silence. And then we get over here, we start to parse stuff again. So something comes in, we have a JS tag that is needing to be evaluated because of HTML parsing. Yeah, what in the world? That's interesting. That winds up going through garbage collection, more HTML parsing. So this is using some type of HTML string to create yet another element. We wind up getting the computed style. So this looks like whenever you see this type of thing right here, where you're looking at the offset, width type, top, left, all that type of stuff, getting the computed style and looking at the scrolling, that usually always screams advertisements. They're trying to stay on the screen. They don't want you to scroll past them or anything like that. This is a very common thing on the web. There are new standards being proposed that will allow ads to do this without destroying the UI thread, basically. And so, browser vendors are evaluating those options. But right now, ads that want to stay visible, they have to really just hammer on the UI thread. And so that's a get bounding client rectangle. That's where you're trying to figure out the size and the offset of an element. And then there's a bunch of more, script evaluation. Each one of these, some of these are really heavy. Like this is US ads, openx.net. You'll notice there's a lot of different domains being used here. So it is pretty interesting to kind of study how different ads and ad networks work. Intent IQ. What is this one? This is legit. So these are all third-party ads, basically, that are firing off requests and stuff. So quite a bit of third-party stuff out here. This is legit. Rhythm Exchange. What's this one here? We have Bid Switch. 1rx.io. pswec.com. So there's quite a few different domains in play here. There's Antique, legit, w55c.net. So there's quite a bit in play here. So this is definitely something we'd have to look into to see, exactly where the bottlenecks, apply. It looks like once we hit here, scripting just basically hammers on the frames per second, such that you can no longer, you will definitely notice some issues, because the frames per second drops down to, just a few. Yeah, so just about 1 frame per second all throughout here. Right here it is at 60 frames per second. Right here it bumps up a little bit to 5 frames per second, bumps up there to 14, but here it's 1 frame per second, 1 frame per second. Yeah, there's definitely something here that is just drowning the UI thread. So that is something for us to look into a bit more. What we can do as well, you can sort items on here, not by the start time, so they're not chronological, but the duration inclusive, so that you see the heavier items towards the top. Excuse me. So you notice that the heaviest item took half a second by itself. So 500 milliseconds, which doesn't seem like a lot of time, but when you add those up, you got 550 milliseconds here, 316 milliseconds there, 304, 250, 223. You start to really see multiple seconds, which takes a long time. If you just count 6 seconds, 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000, 6 1000. That is a long, long time for a website to be hung up, and that can definitely ruin your browsing experience. But you see all this time is spent on HTML request, HTML parsing. Inside the parsing, we have yet a script evaluation and a whole lot of elements being created, offsets being determined, scrolling being checked out. You can see these types of issues as well, where style.left is given -9999 pixels, style overflow is hidden, style top is -9999 pixels. What this is doing is this is creating something in the document. No Mississippi's, did I not say Mississippi? Oh. This is creating something in the document, and it's pushing it 1,000 pixels up off of the screen and 1,000 pixels to the left off of the screen, and it's hiding it. So it's not even visible. It's not even on the page. It's creating it and it's putting it way out in the ether. Like it is totally just way out there. And so this is, it's really interesting to see something like that, because this is, they're doing some logic, or they're trying to, get credit for something that is not actually on the page. And so that's the type of stuff that you have to look for, because this is really, this particular piece of code contributes to the overall drain of system power and capability on the page or on the device, but it doesn't actually contribute anything to the experience of the page itself. This is not even a visible ad whatever this is right here. So this is, there's quite a bit of time spent evaluating this. This is a, a quarter of a second by itself, 315 seconds, inclusive for the parent, and we're creating something that is not even visible on the page. So this is the type of stuff that you really want to, really have some discernment for, look out for, and see if you can avoid those types of things. So I think that's fairly decent kind of approach looking through this. Again, we can switch back to chronological sorting here, filtering events. Right now, we can look at image decoding as well. So you'll notice if we jump into the very back right here, here's a whole bunch of requests. You can jump and you can actually see where images are being decoded. So this is something you can do as well. So if you wind up having the same image loaded 3 or 4 times, but you have slight subtleties in the URL, the image will actually have to be decoded each and every time. And I believe that's still the case. And so you would find items where maybe you're decoding the same images over and over and over, and you definitely wouldn't want to do that. Let's see, I'm looking back at the chat window right now. Looks like there's 1 frame per second when CPU utilization is at 0. Isn't that because the tab was not focused? Yeah, so Spear Attack 666 actually has a good point there. That might actually be because the tab was not focused. That could in fact be why. Once the tab loses focus, it starts to go into this, this lower power state where we slow timers down. JavaScript doesn't execute as quick as it normally would, and what we're trying to do is put the page into like this this suspended state almost, where it's not dead, it's not discarded, but it's also not using as much resources as it would be if it were focused. And so if we were to do something like we'll do a quick example here real quick. Move this back to the bottom right. We'll jump back inside here, and we will go to our desktop. And so what I'll do is I'll jump inside, close this down, and I'll come over here and I'll go to jsbin.com. I can go ahead and close down my developer tools. And we're going to add a new timestamp here. So this is for 1:13:20. Low state blurred focus, or tabs will do. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to actually come to the JavaScript tab, and we're going to set a timer on here. So we turn off the HTML. We don't really care about that. And we're going to do set interval. And inside the interval, I'm going to do a function. And I'm going to call that function every 250 milliseconds. And what I'm going to do is we'll come up here and we'll create a var counter and equal to 0. And we're going to do document.body.textContent equals counter plus plus. So that will increment the value of counter. You'll notice it's now just counting up. There's 12, 14. It just keeps counting up every 250 milliseconds. What we could do is we could change that to every second. So 0, then 1, then 2. Now, whenever I minimize this, I want you to look at where the number is right now. So my JavaScript is running. The JavaScript is running, and we're at 14:15. So I minimized that at 15 seconds. So now that script is going into a hanging state, and it's not using as much resources as it was. So it's been closed now for about 10 seconds or so. Let's see where it is when I open it back up. It actually picked it back up. I want to see here. Let me try a different one. So it's at 35 when I did this. 40. So we'll stay over here for about 10 seconds or so, and we'll just go to bing.com. And we'll just type in hello world. Yeah. Okay, so it was 40 seconds whenever we left. 60 seconds. It seems like it actually is still counting up. This is totally not what I was expecting to see. I was expecting to see it start to hang there, because I believe it does whenever it is not the focus. It might just be the nature, like this particular thing this particular approach is going to respond this way. I might have to think about this just a little bit more. Hey, Tech Constantine, how's it going? So Marvin Danig, don't actually have an iPad with me or anything. I'm Microsoft Edge program manager, so not going to be bringing an iPad to work anytime soon. Let's see here. In fact, I haven't purchased an iPad anytime recently. I have an older one at the house, but yep, that's about it. So, but let's see here. If there is a condition in which the page will go into more of a suspended state, and this counter right now will cease to tick as quickly as it normally does. What I might try to do is I'm going to give this function a name. We'll call it update. And let's go ahead and I'll put in as well a little performance.mark. Performance.mark. And I'll put a label in there called updating. You're right, actually, I think that is the issue. It's 1 second. It doesn't completely freeze it. But if we make this 100 milliseconds, and then we lower this at 50, we open it back up. Okay, it was only 10 milliseconds that had passed there, so lower it at 87. We'll wait just a second. I think that's only going to let it go, basically 1 loop per second or so, something like that, and open it back up. And yeah, so you see, that was way more than 20 milliseconds. So if we actually have something much faster, then we start to see the issue, because I had a 1 second delay there. One thing we can do as well is we can actually open this up. We're going to go to performance, just like we did before. You remember these little diamonds up here? Well, there's also this other option for performance.mark indicators. And so throughout your own scripting, if you want to measure the time between two different items, visually, you can just drop an arbitrary mark in there anywhere you want. So every 100 milliseconds, I'm going to drop a mark inside here. I might actually make that every 250 milliseconds, just to spread them out just a little bit more. And let's go ahead and start profiling. So we're looking at this every 250 milliseconds, we get one, and then let's go ahead and minimize that. And after a couple of seconds, let's open it back up. Okay, now let's stop profiling and see what we actually get. We should see an area in which yep, there you can see it. So if you look across the top, you can see the performance mark is actually jumping every 1/4 of a second right here until we get to where we minimize or the tab loses focus. And now you see that they span out, let's see, it's 8855. 784, so it's about every second. And then when the tab actually comes back up, then the JavaScript starts kicking in again. So that was exactly right. I'm totally blanking on who said that earlier. That was Spear Attack. That was asking about whether or not it was actually going into like a low suspended state mode. And Rio was correct that the About Flags tab shows a check mark. Only execute timers once per second in non-visible tabs to improve battery life. So, yep, apparently that's something inside our About Flags as well that you can enable if you want to. And so if we were to jump over here and hop into About Flags, there's apparently a check mark in there. Probably going to be down towards the bottom. Fetch. No, I'm not sure where that is. But I'm sure it's inside there. So inside there is apparently the option to turn some stuff off, or turn some things down rather, whenever you are in a non-visible, non-focused tab. Okay, so let's see here. Just kind of glancing back to the Twitter stream here. No new URLs, so if anyone in the chat room has one, please go ahead and drop it in there, and we can we'll move on and look at that. Somebody said earlier that they admired my facial hair. Please. This is it. I get this tiny ginger beard and like a little bit of fuzz on the side, and that's it. Yeah, that's just... I see these people. I've got a buddy of mine who has the largest, reddest beard in the world, and his friends call him King Ginger, and it's just a beard to be admired. It's like I can sprout this like little tiny patch, looks like moss on a stump, and that's about it. So more than Robert Johnson gets. I guess I gotta be thankful for what little patch I can grow. I suppose I had my networking instructor in high school. He would grow, I guess, what's called a jazz dot or something. It's just like this tiny little patch of hair right there, like in the base of your lip, and that's all he would grow. All right, so I'm gonna look now. So there was a question. Let me go ahead and add this over here. So we'll say 1.22.00. Shouldn't all MSFT employees use Surface Books? I think Surface Book is, without a doubt, the best device I've ever owned. And I have owned a MacBook Air, so I can throw that into the equation. I've owned, my very first computer was an Acer. I've owned Lenovo machines. I've owned, Lenovo with like ThinkPads and X1 Carbon. I've owned the Acer Aspire R7, I believe. I've got that one at the house as well. And just without a doubt, the Surface Book is hands down the best device I've ever used. That being said, if you make a $3,000 laptop your benchmark, then you might wind up building stuff that simply won't run on anyone else's machine. And we saw this, I guess, earlier in a discussion we were having about, some scripts that will lock up someone's machine, but they won't lock up someone else's machine. And I mentioned that I'm on a Surface Book i7 with like a terabyte hard drive, and I think it's like 16 gigs of RAM and stuff. It's something just absurd. It's crazy. And some things actually won't be powerful enough to trip up this particular device, but they will be more than enough sufficient and capable to trip up many other devices. And so if everyone at Microsoft was using this, the industry standard hardware machine, then you probably would have more problems using Microsoft software than you do, presently today. And so, people use a broad array of different things. The X1 Carbon from Lenovo is really popular around here. Surface Books are popular. People have them. They have the i5 and i7 versions. The actual, the historical like Surface lines, so the Surface tablets, those are also really popular. You'll see people with not really first generation, but the second, third, and fourth. Second, third, and fourth, you'll see people with those. And then, there's some people that have, Mac. They've got, what is this? We've got like these things. So this is the other ThinkPad right here. This isn't the X1 Carbon, is it? No, this is the T440. T440, yeah. And let's see what else we got over here. Got like another Acer machine right here. This is actually, that's pretty thin. Small Acer machine. So I mean, we're constantly using different devices and stuff. That's the Acer Aspire S7. So actually looks like a MacBook Air to some degree. And so it's, we're using different devices and stuff, but it's ultimately up to the individual and what they want to use. And so it's, we have a nice kind of diverse array of hardware here on campus. Okay, so let's jump in. Let's look at another URL. We've got 125.27 habo.com/hotel. So this is, we're going to check this out right now on the stream. So this is from Winter Jelmari. Just let them know that we're talking about it. Okay, let's look at this. So this URL is habbo.com/hotel. Let me just kind of look at that real quick. And it is said to load very slowly. So this is actually a login screen. I see. Okay, I can just close it. This looks pretty cool. I love pixel art. So I'll load this up real quick over here, and you can kind of see what it is I'm looking at. So we'll jump inside here. We'll then go into habbo.com/hotel, and immediately we're going to be presented with a login. Ooh, let me kind of zoom out of there. So I'm going to click X on this. Habbo loads. Actually, it looks like it loads fairly quickly for me, unless this is, talking about getting into this looks like a game, I guess. Yep. So virtual world. Presumably they are referring to the virtual world of habbo.com, and not the website itself. So let me actually do a real quick search, and I'll see if we actually have any reports about habbo.com being slow or known issues there. Let's see. We'll go to I'm curious. Does anybody in the chat window actually play this or have an account for this? All right, so I'm looking now. Oh, so Steve Pell looks like just ran into an Edge crashing issue. Sorry about that. Let's look at, there are a couple things here that habbo.com brings up search results for, but I don't think these are related. So it's basically some crashing stuff inside Chakra. Yeah, I don't see any previous or prior reports for habbo.com issues. So I will have to, in this case, I'm not familiar with this, what this is. So I wouldn't be comfortable just making an account and jumping in here and playing with it. Yeah, Mateo, I agree. The website seems like it's loading just fine. I'm assuming based on that, that the reporter on Twitter, the individual that reported this on Twitter, is referring to the actual loading of the game. So this is a Finnish individual who is said to be a Habbo ambassador. So cool. But yeah, the website itself seems to be running fairly well. So what I'll do is I will, we can file a, that's awesome. So, James is pointing out that this is a game social network kind of thing, similar to the Second Life. Second Life, I recall, Second Life was a lot of fun. I played that back in the day, back in 2007, I believe. What we can go ahead and do is, I'm not quite sure what the issue is with Habbo, but we can file a bug. Yeah, I've just been out of the loop, I guess. So Second Life I'm familiar with. I used to play Second Life. I used to play Second Life back when, so before they used to have this issue where someone could build their house and they could put up like impassable surfaces and stuff. So not just anybody could pass through the surfaces. But if you moved, I think it was your camera, you could move your camera independent of your person, and then you can move your camera into the building, and then you could tell your person to come to the camera, and they would run up against that surface, and they would like kind of vibrate violently until like the computer just popped them inside the house, and then you're inside the property, and then they fixed that bug, and you could no longer explore people's lands and stuff like that. So Wesley says the game runs through Flash Player. Okay, if it runs through Flash Player, then that's a little bit, yeah, it's a little more difficult, because Flash Player is hopefully on its way out. It is the source of many vulnerabilities. We are going to be basically silencing and muting non-essential Flash content on the web in the future. Chrome has announced that they're doing the same thing. And so it wouldn't prevent a game like this where the primary content is part of Flash, but Flash itself is going to start to play a lesser and lesser role. Years ago, I think it was Mozilla, they actually constructed a small utility called Shumway, which would convert Flash files, SWF files, into HTML content. I think using either Canvas, I believe it was Canvas. And so depending on what the Flash video was, they'd be able to convert it into a Canvas element, and you can then have a fully HTML5 experience without having to have the additional overhead of loading plugins into the browser for Flash to work. So Mateo, it says he's inside the game. It is Flash, no particular issues. I can, I guess, close down this view right here, bring up the chat window again. Just don't know the game though. So it looks like Mateo's is kind of on this right now. I'm going to go ahead and file a bug anyway, and we'll say that it is a Flash-based game, but is running very slowly, reportedly in Edge, and that way we can have something to track moving forward. So let's go ahead. I'm going to jump into bugs.microsoftedge.com. So again, right there, if you ever have a bug, I'm going to go ahead and file this one. But if you run into any issues, please submit them there. Send me the bug ID number. Share it here so other people can try to repro it. If they repro it, then we can all click Me Too. We can get those number of instances up, and we can hopefully get your bug resolved in a more timely fashion. So let me go back real quick. I want to see if anybody else has submitted anything about Habo. Nope. So we're going to go to habo.com/hotel game plays slowly. Now, Mateo, you're saying the game is, you're not running into any particular issues. So it seems like this could be one of the things that we just got done talking about, where the actual hardware that you're on is going to be very significant. And so it depends on what Mateo is using and what the individual on Twitter is using to actually run the machine, or to actually run the game. And so if Mateo's on a far beefier, more powerful and capable machine, then we wouldn't expect to see any issues there. So I'm going to create an issue. I'm going to call it habo.com/hotel game plays poorly for some Edge users. And we'll just put this inside performance. I don't think we have a Flash item inside here. So we just put this inside, yeah, I'll put this inside performance for right now. Okay, so Mateo's on an i7 processor, no lags or anything, just to understand the game. That's like how I am with most games these days. My son plays this game called Roblox or something, and I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Games are so much simpler when you just had to run from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, and then jump over the flag. It's like that was so much easier. So I'm going to make sure that the bug identifies okay, so I'm going to make sure that the bug actually calls out the original reporter of the issue. So game loads slowly. Game loads and runs very sluggishly. Typing is slow as well. All right, so I'm going to submit this one. We're going to open up this issue. This is going to be bug number 8559746. So if you have logged into this game, if it's working well for you, please specify the specs of your machine and just post a comment. If you can see that there's an issue with the performance of the game, with typing inside the game, go ahead and click Me Too as well, and then as well share the specs for your machine itself. And I'm going to share this link with the individual that reported it and see if we can't get them to also put some information about their machine inside here as a comment. So we'll say, filed a bug on your behalf. Please consider adding a comment with further information or info about your machine. Okay, so I'm going to submit this one to them, and I'll post the link over into the chat. So if anybody is looking into this as well, if you repro, please share that information. If you do not repro, then please let us know. So Wesley is saying that he's played Habbo for 5 years. So Wesley, if you have experience playing Habbo and Edge, please post something on that bug and let us know how it's doing. All right, let's look up what's going on next. So I'm going to go ahead and add the bug number to this one. So that is issue number 8559746. And let's look at the next item. So, hello, Joel. How are you? Well, I guess, so Joel is asking, what is this? Presumably you're talking about, like, who am I? What am I doing here? My name is Jonathan Sampson. I'm a program manager and engineer at Microsoft. I work on the Microsoft Edge team. And this is a session through which people can chat and debug the web together. So if you come across slow or broken websites, you can share the link here, and we will debug them live on the air together. So that is what we're doing. Let's see if anyone, I'm not seeing any other links shared inside of. Now, we actually did have, someone was referring to a JavaScript issue, if I'm not mistaken, earlier. So Marvin, if you're still in here, Marvin Danig, you stated earlier that you had JavaScript issues. While I don't have Safari or an iPad or anything with me, I am more than happy to try and be an extra set of eyes on your project. So anybody else, if you have a JavaScript, CSS, or HTML question, more than happy to look into them as well. So Harsha Reddy asks, and let me go ahead and put this inside the notes as well. So 140 is the emulation in DevTools fully fleshed out? So emulation inside DevTools. Emulation is a bit of a loaded term in this case, because the DevTools don't really emulate another browser. Much like you think about ROMs and emulators, or think about emulating a previous operating system. What the DevTools do is they stand up and they take down and they modify portions of the environment to make it more accurately reflect previous versions of the Edge browser or of the Internet Explorer browser. In this case, actually just Internet Explorer, because Internet Explorer had document modes. Edge does not have all these different document modes, so it can still emulate some of the previous versions of IE and stuff. as far as it being fully fleshed out, it is sufficient for many instances and many cases of what people would be trying to experiment with. But it is not going to be, when you switch to the IE8 doc mode, you are not now inside the IE8 engine. Basically, all that happens is there's a whole bunch of if checks in place, if this, then that, and everything that will say if the doc mode is IE8, let's handle the JavaScript this way. If it's not IE8, let's handle it this way. And so there's going to be some subtleties there. We say I got to test this mobile website wayfair.com and select Lumia 950 XL, and the website is zoomed in wrong where I selected iPhone 6s works. So are you talking about device emulation then? Okay, that is a little bit different, and there's still going to be some issues there depending on the website. So I have my device right here. I can go ahead and share my screen with the desktop here. So let's go ahead. I'm going to put Wayfair on my timesheet here. So 142.07 wayfair.com on mobile and emulation. So we're going to go ahead and look at this on mobile and emulation. I'm going to go to project my screen app. Hopefully I can just search for it now. Nope. Okay, let me see if I can so we ran into this issue before. Here we go. I can just find it. Okay. Oh, we already have it running. That's why. Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen here. And what you will be looking at, let's see here. Plug this in. And I'm going to close down that. Let me run that one more time real quick. So I want the project my screen application, P, project my screen app. There we go. Okay, so now I can share my desktop, and we'll look at the Wayfair site. So here is my phone. This is not an emulation. This is the actual phone. You can see right now I have the physical device in my hand, and we're just going to go to wayfair.com. And we'll just select that first one. We'll see what we get. So it's loading up right now. It looks like it is rendering fairly nicely. So I think probably the issue that you were referring to is whenever you do the same thing inside Edge with the developer tools, you wind up getting a grossly oversized version of the site. That sounds a bit like what you were suggesting here. So if I were to pull this aside real quick and open up, okay, so we're inside, you can now see my desktop still. We're inside my remote desktop, so I'm going to go to Wayfair. And I'm going to say no thanks here. Let's go ahead and open up the developer tools. And inside the developer tools, we're going to have device emulation. So I was talking about document mode emulation, but you were actually referring to emulating different devices. And so we're going to go to the emulation tab. And underneath device, we're going to select Nokia Lumia. I'll do 950 XL. That's the one I have in my hand. And so you'll notice the site is a little oversized. If I refresh here, let's see if it fixed the rendering of it a little bit. Doesn't appear to. So there does seem to be an issue with the emulation layout. Let me just kind of glance in here real quick and see what we're looking at. So we have the portrait. We can switch to landscape. Still seems to go off the page a little bit over there. Let's see. So it's actually, if I it looks like it's zoomed in just a little bit whenever I actually load this up. So you notice right now I'm physically like manipulating the viewport with my fingers. So I'm actually pinching the viewport. But this looks like the page has loaded just fine. Let me try this one more time just to make sure we're getting the full page. I don't actually want to sign in. What does this want me to do? I want to go back to the home page. Here we go. So it does look like there might be an initial issue with the sizing of it. And so right now I've got it in landscape. I'll put it back in portrait. Now it seems to have everything figured out a little bit better. So it just lost it again. Let me zoom out. Yeah, so this definitely looks like something we ought to report, file a bug on. So the issue is we have a horizontal scroll bar when we really shouldn't during emulation. So let's go ahead and we'll file that bug right now. I'm curious if anybody out there would like to go ahead and grab a couple of screenshots from your own machine of this particular issue, because we're going to know that this is not, whenever we look at the remote, if we look at the actual remote setup, what we will be looking at is this right here. So this is, on the left, this is the 950XL emulated, the device size and everything, and on the right is the actual 950XL. So you notice on here I don't have those issues. It actually is, it squeezes in quite nicely inside the viewport. It fits the device quite well. And so if someone wants to, on their machine, feel free to take a screenshot of my desktop right now with this particular device here, and grab a screenshot from your own desktop for the edge emulation of this particular domain. Harsha, this is something that you could do if you like. And what we're going to do is I'm going to file a bug for this against our developer tools. And then if you can, just whenever you jump in there, if click Me Too to indicate that you also see the issue, and upload your screenshots as well. So let me go ahead. I'm going to jump in. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to jump in and get that filed right now. So let's move back to the top center view, and we're going to go to open up a new issue, and we'll say emulated viewport is incorrectly sized. That's probably okay. Like we'll do emulated viewport is incorrectly sized, and we'll put this inside. Let's see, developer tools, and so we'll do the reproduction steps as step 1. Navigate to http://wayfair.com to Joel Herrera. I can't fix the websites, but I can help to understand the issue of the websites. And then we can obviously reach out to the developers that run them, and we can try and help them fix them as well. So let's see. First step is navigate to wayfair.com. We did that. Next step is to select 950XL from the device emulation. So select 950XL from device emulation. Note that site hangs off, we'll say with note horizontal scroll bar. Viewing wayfair.com on an actual 950XL does not result in a horizontal scroll bar. So Harsha, I'm curious, if you are on Twitter, can you please send me a tweet that contains a link to Wayfair and a comment about this particular issue? Typically whenever I'm filing bugs, I like to put in the bug itself a link to the person that actually reported it. That way I can reach out to you if and when the issue is fixed, and you get the credit for actually sharing the information to begin with. So if you can send off a tweet to this account right here, Sampson MSFT, just mentioning that the device emulation is not accurate, we can then file this bug and get this attributed to you, if you don't mind. And this is fantastic. So it looks like the Habbo.com hotel ambassador on Twitter is sharing the bug link and encouraging people to go in and add comments if they too run into issues. So I'm going to wait just a few more seconds here for Harsh's tweet. Harsha, if you don't have Twitter, just let me know, and I'll go ahead and submit the bug without that reference. But if you do, I'll wait just a few more seconds here. So Eric Snyder is asking, let's see, we'll do 151.45. So Eric Snyder is asking, do you guys ever report the sites so they don't change, so that they don't change or get fixed after the bug is filed, but before Edge can get fixed? It seems it may be a bit of a limitation if we're counting on live sites. Do you guys ever export the sites so that they don't change? I see what you're saying. Yes. So if the site changes, more often than not, one of the things that we try to do, you'll identify that the site is broken. And on Stack Overflow, this is the hardest thing ever, because people will have something that's broken on Stack Overflow and it's on their live site and they need help with it. When you help them, they make the change to the live site, and now that bug or whatever it is never there to be seen again. And so what you always want to do in the very first step of any one of these investigations is to identify the problem and then work on a reduction. So the reduction is to basically take the example that the individual has reported, reduce it to the fewest amount of bytes as possible while still retaining the buggy behavior, and then save that as a local file in your machine. There are other things you can do. Sometimes we can ask people to create a backup copy of that particular page, and they will. Sometimes you can go to something like the Wayback Machine and find an earlier version of that page that still contains the layout issues. But more often than not, what you want to do is actually create a local reduction. That way you can actually attach that reduction to the bug itself. And you can say, hey, the website used to do this. Here's a screenshot of it when it did this. And here's a reduction that actually takes care of the same scenario. So if we fix this reduction, it will fix that issue that was once plaguing the website. So looks like I got Harshdeep's tweet here. I'm going to go ahead and put this inside. Copy link inside this bug. This is the stymied sloth, I believe. Yes, okay. So I'm going to submit this bug. All right, and for anyone else who saw this issue as well, especially if you can reproduce it on your machine. Oh no, what happened? I didn't submit. Let me try this again. Device emulation isn't accurate. I'll do that. Category, developer tools. So for some reason I just submitted the bug and it didn't go through. It just said something's happening. Come back later. Let's do say one. Navigate to http wayfair.com. 2. Enable device emulation of 950 XL on desktop. 3. Note presence of horizontal scroll bar. Loading the site on an actual 950 XL does not result in a horizontal scroll bar. Okay, now we're good. I need to actually save the copy of this bug just in case it doesn't submit a second time. And open the issue. Yeah, something happened. Okay, I'm not actually able to submit a bug right now. So I'm going to have to come back to that one in just a bit. I'll have to come back to that one in just a bit and actually find out. Actually, you know what I may do is I may just file this internally and then swing back around. And no, I'll leave it here. I'll come back around and try and submit this later on. Okay, so let's see here. Next up is, let's look at issue is CK Editor 3.6, the WYSIWYG editor. It's a really old version, but still used by lots of vBulletin installations. Is vBulletin used by many people these days? I'm just playing. Let's look at that real quick. So you can find the official zip for the version online, which also includes a samples directory with some examples. So with these types of issues, this would be a tougher one to persuade development to resolve, because if it's an older version of CK Editor, and the issues don't repro in newer versions of CK Editor, then more often than not, what we would try to do is outreach to the CK Editor team themselves, so they're aware of these issues, and then try to outreach to some of the larger sites that we can find that actually have these issues as well and let them know. Making changes in the code base to accommodate legacy software is not always as winsome as making changes in the code base to fix bugs or to add new features and new functionality to the browser. And so we've got mountains of feature requests, and so more often than not, those would get the actual resources, as opposed to something like a very old version of CK Editor. So let's jump, let's see here. I don't think there was anything else here recently submitted, other than the spam that shows up in here from time to time, this angels in action type of thing. Let's see. Yep, so that looks like pretty much everything on the list for right now. So if you have a URL, if you have something that is not working well, or if you just have a question about some web development, something that you would like to know, we can definitely take the next 30 minutes or so and look at that. And that would lead to, that'd be about 5.5 hours of broadcast today for live debugging. I do need to figure out what is up with bugs.microsoftedge.com, because I'm not able to submit a bug right now. Let's see, I'm going to open up a new issue again. We'll try this one more time. Device emulation isn't correct. Now we'll just do issues with. So viewport issues with device emulation. Put this under the developer tools. And this is my repro steps. Open the issue. Something is happening. Try again later, please. Thank you for the patience. Okay, well, I have to hold on to that one. Joel, it was nice to talk to you. Take care. If you have any questions in the future, please do. Let me know if I can help. All right, so I'm going to run and let's see. It looks like we might have just gotten another URL from Twitter. So we'll take a look at that right now. Let's see. So we are at 2:017, and we're going to say sfgate.com won't load on mobile. So let's look at that right now. I'll just kind of respond to this real quick, and we'll let people know that we're going to look into this. Now investigating sfgate.com on Windows Mobile live by YouTube at http://youtube.com/c/Jonathan Sampson/live. I haven't used a smiley in like forever. I need to put smiley in some here. There we go. All right, so the issue here is with sfgate.com. So what I'm going to do is actually take out my trusty mobile device here again, and we'll just share the screen. And I'm going to go to sfgate.com. We'll see what happens. So we get the mobile site. Looks like it loaded for me. So I'm not immediately seeing the issue here. Maybe we need to try let's look at an article here. Oh, looks like it just got pulled into a pop-up. Okay, we're going to close that, jump back over here. So gas station translator, swimmer disagrees on gun pointing. So there's definitely a lot of ads in place. You know, there's one that's fixed to the bottom of the screen down there. There's ads in the middle here. They seem to disappear a little bit whenever I scroll up. But it looks like for the most part, everything is working quite well. We can look in landscape mode, jump back to the home page. And I'm not noticing any serious problems here. I mean, there's definitely some hangs here. So you'll notice, for instance, the progress bar is just kind of stuck there at the bottom. If we expand out the menu, that doesn't actually seem to be working for me. There is definitely something on here that is making the page a little less responsive. There's quite a few ads on here, actually. But I'm not seeing, for instance, the report that Mark... Excuse me, I'll take another drink of water here. The report that Mark is sharing is that it just simply doesn't load at all, it seems, which is not what we're seeing. We are seeing that it loads. I mean, it is a little sluggish, but it does indeed load. So I am curious. You know, we might even want to jump into this on desktop and start to do some more performance analysis on it. So this is loading the mobile site, which is, you know, commonly people use the m subdomain. So m.sfgate.com. I see what you're saying. So if I go inside here, is that inside settings and yeah, website preference, desktop version. So if we do that, we'll load this again. So for anyone who's just wondering, Rio suggested that perhaps the individual is trying to load the desktop site, or yeah, it looks like it's still going to be based off the, I don't know, this might be a media query. So we might actually be looking at the desktop site. It might be one responsive site rather than having a adaptive site approach where the site determines where it ought to send you off to based upon the device and the dimensions and stuff of your device. And so in this case, I think we're dealing with possibly just one site that really resizes and realigns itself whenever it gets displayed on a smaller screen. So what we'll try to do here is I'll jump in here real quick, see if I can log back into my remote box. Okay, and we will jump back over here and we'll just take a look at this real quick on the desktop. So close down the developer tools. That will remove the device emulation from this Wayfair tab. And we can just jump into, you know what I did on the phone? Actually, I set it to always prefer desktop, but we're still on the m.sfgate domain. We're not actually on sfgate domain. So I'm going to go here, sfgate.com. I'll load in the mobile version. We can actually do performance testing on this. And this doesn't look like it. Whoa, that is a big picture. You do see the tab is hanging here. Let's go ahead and yeah, there's definitely something going on here. I mean, you can see just how delayed it is. So let's close down this, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the developer tools. We'll jump back over into the performance tab, and in this case, what I think I'm going to do is I want to start the performance session, and then I want to refresh the browser, so we get data about whenever it starts as well. So I'm going to stay right here on the page. The page right now is kind of going, it's churning, it's setting everything up, it's loading the ads and everything. And hopefully here within just a minute, we'll stop the performance recorder. You notice there's some type of, yep, there's a modal ad that just popped up over the top. We can close that. Let's go in and look at the actual performance data. So we'll stop collecting that now. It'll analyze, it'll build out the individual bars to categorically, identify what type of activity is taking place. And here we go. You notice I was not shifted away from the tab in this case, but the frames per second still dropped to down around 0. So we're going to let this just resize itself. Look at where the navigation, okay, so there was a navigation at 2.9 seconds into this session, and we have DOM content loaded at 3.25, and then way over here, what do we have? We have navigation, so there's Facebook Connect, here is Facebook as well, there is the DOM content loaded event for the mobile San Francisco or SFGate. DOM content loaded for the mobile site, and then some navigation here. So navigation to a Facebook plugin, DOM content loaded a couple times for the San Francisco site and for the Facebook site. So you'll notice here as well, we're going to see a lot of scripting in this area. And so we have 21% of this full time spent on script evaluation, 13 spent on timers. But still, roughly a quarter of that time spent on evaluating scripts. That's quite heavy. But let's go ahead and just look at some of these. So what we're going to do is we can sort by the duration inclusive, and so this is going to show us the heavier stuff up on the top. And so like we have this 1 second hang for the load event on the DOM, and so this actually sets up event listeners whenever that runs. The event listeners, you'll notice. Let's see here. Let's increase this. Quite a bit is going on here. There's a lot of set inner HTMLs called one after another. Not ideal. I'm going to change this actually to start time. Keeps us down inside the same anonymous function that we were in though. So you don't have to worry about having to go and find that again. What I do want to look at though is the call stacks. And from here we can see 4% was spent on this anonymous function. It's not really anything that is too heavy here. And expand this 3.21. That goes all the way down to here. Then we have this anonymous function, e.deliver. So this is happening inside krxd.net. Control tag. So that's control tag.js. We can jump over another tab and see what that is. So krdx.net looks like it's a CDN. I can find control tag, actually comes up for me there. Just looking at it now over here on the other screen. It is not immediately clear what it's doing though, so yep, that's I do see a reference to Hogan in here. Hogan, which oh, we have a okay. I have a long horizontal scroll bar. I was kind of curious why I wasn't seeing the content wrapped. There's a reference to Hogan in there, Hogan 3, which was an old templating library. Yeah, other than that, it's not immediately clear what this is. You can try look up a little bit more information. That's control. What was that? That's inside control tag.js. There does appear to be a lot of people asking about it, asking if it's malware and stuff. It's interesting. I don't see any JavaScript frameworks or anything like that. Let's see, disparity in view page. So someone is mentioning it inside of a Stack Overflow question, so maybe they mention what it is here. So this is in the context of a Wall Street Journal article. They reference control tag here. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really look like it's too much to be worried about. That's CTJS, control tag JS. Yeah, I'm not going to be worried about that too much. It's using very little resource. So if we look at this entire thing, it's using 4% of the time was spent here. That's not really too bad. I'm curious what's happening in these regions where the frames per second drops, though. So we have a couple calls out to the DOM. So in this particular region, though, 35% was spent inside here doing what? So I'm constantly jumping into the heaviest portion. So you notice all the way down this, I'm looking at the inclusive CPU usage time, which is how much time was used by that function and how much time was used by the chain reaction of other functions that function called. So one function will fire and it'll call another function, which will call another function. And so the inclusive time is how much did all of that, from the down to the very bottom back up to the very top, how much did all of that count and cost? And so in this case, there's a lot of work being done. 35% of this time was spent, basically roughly 35% was spent on computing client width. And yeah, this is interesting. And location actually as well. That makes me wonder if that is a reference to the location, window.location, then that might be inside of an iframe right there. And so they're setting a cookie as well. Yeah, this makes me suspect an iframe in this area. Well, yeah, it's so Google Analytics actually. This whole portion of logic is inside Google Analytics. The second heavier part is inside videos by Vimba.io. That's a ready state change. That's telling us that, you know, the video is becoming increasingly more ready. So there's a request made for it. That's usually a ready state change when the server responds, you know, with headers and stuff. I believe that's when it progresses to the next ready state. Ready states are basically like numbers between 1 and 4, or 0 and 4, that indicate the status of that request, whether or not it is, you know, initialized or completed or anything in between. So insert adjacent HTML is where they spend a bunch of time here. This doesn't really strike me as anything that's too wild on this page. I almost wonder if maybe we need to profile it one more time. just letting it sit there. So let's do that. We'll just start the profiler. We'll let it go for about 10 seconds or so. What just happened there? There we go. So we'll let that run for about 10 seconds and we'll stop that and see what else we find. All right, and let's press stop on there. So that's going to analyze the collected data. We'll see if anything is running just sitting here. So there's nothing that blocks the visual throughput. There's nothing that's blocking the visual throughput here. We can see though that there are some things that are running that are fairly heavy. So you'll notice the first couple of things, the very topmost items. Looks like my mouse has stopped working. Let me plug this back in. So this is the other issue I face sometimes with my Surface Book, is where the mouse actually just stops working. The USB device does. So I need to plug it into the other USB port. There we go. And eventually in the future, I will have to unplug it and plug it into the other USB port. I don't know why it does that. Anywho, let's see here. So the very topmost items here, we have about 11.5% of this entire time was spent on Google syndication, page ad. The next 8.5%, 8.25% rather, is also spent on Google syndication. Down here we have 3%, which is spent on it. Actually, those are all inside the same function. So we have about 11.5% ad safe protected, another 11%. Google Ads, another 10%. Another ad site, 10%. Another ad site, 8%. So all the heaviest things on here are ads, which it's fairly common on the web these days. Seems like that's just kind of increasingly becoming more and more the state of things. So the websites themselves aren't doing too bad, but you just notice there's all these all of these are ad scripts right here. I don't know about control tag. That may not be. I'm not quite sure. But mode ads and adsafeprotected.com. Page ad, pixel, that ad safe protected, Google syndication. So we're just seeing that more and more these days. So let's look at, let's jump back over here to the top view. So the other question is, let's look at the time here, 2:19:27. So I believe there's a discussion going on right now about Inbox, Google Inbox. And so if you kind of are looking over here inside the chat window, there is definitely some talk over there about Google Inbox. Doesn't work for Microsoft Edge. Since Edge is compatible with Google Chrome for the most part, I think it should work. So Column, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but I believe it's Column. There is definitely, Inbox users are not being permitted access if they're inside Edge. This is something that Paul Thurrott, he tweeted a picture about a week ago, I believe, showing that Google Inbox basically was saying, hey, everyone is welcome, but they basically left off Edge. And so they had Opera, I think Firefox. They even encourage you to download Safari, if I'm not mistaken, which you can't do on Windows. But so you have to be inside one of their approved browsers, or as you pointed out, change your user agent string to something that makes you look like one of their approved browsers. This doesn't mean that they're trying to target Edge users necessarily. It could be the case that the vast majority of stuff just works, but there is something inside the experience, deeper inside there, that may potentially break or behave in an unpredictable way. And so as a result, they just tell developers, users rather, that if you're using Edge, then you probably need to get a different browser. And so You know, I understand. I think as a developer, the difficulty there, but at the same time, it is clear when you change your UA string that the site does appear to work. So that could be based on some older version of Edge. You know, whenever the individuals were developing this particular solution, they may have tested on Edge version 12 or something, maybe 14.02, I think it was. And so, now 14.02, I'm totally blank on 21.402, I forget. The build from last November. And so it may be that they were testing on something like that, and they just, you know, they didn't realize that we were fixing things that they, you know, were seeing as being broken. And so it could be that we just need to outreach, and I'm sure we actually have people who are probably working on that, you know, right now, and trying to outreach, make sure that we understand what issues they're facing, and that they understand what issues we have resolved in recent builds of Microsoft Edge. So I think we might, you know, take another 10 minutes here or so, and then just shut it down. That turns out to be about 5.5 hours of live debugging today. I do want to see if I can file that bug now, because I don't want to leave that one unreported. So viewport issues and device emulation. Column, I think you were mentioning that you were actually looking for, so Poppy6978, I notice you. How you doing? Column, I think you were mentioning that you were actually looking to get into web development. You had some questions about that. So if you could maybe restate that, I'm going to try and submit this bug, and then we'll talk about that for like the last 10 or 12 minutes that we're doing the broadcast today. So let's put this inside Developer Tools. I need to come over here and copy my content one more time. I can preview that and submit the issue. Something is happening. Please try again later. I don't know what this deal is, but I'm going to go ahead and email one of our engineers about this. Let's see. So I just tweeted at one of our engineers real quick just to see if this is a known issue, and hopefully that will be resolved before too long. So Kala Mufat is asking at 2:24:20, learning web development. So I'd like to find a good way to get into web development. I'm more of a UWP systems dev guy, but I'd like to make a DIY web page. Well, you could totally, I'm trying to think, you know, right now I'm teaching my son HTML, and I'm trying to avoid teaching him any CSS or any JavaScript for the time being, simply because it's a lot of work. Like it's very different technologies. There you wind up, you can't just learn CSS because that's just a syntax. Like you have to learn all the individual properties. You have to learn about the different at rules. You have to learn about the diverse environments between different operating systems, and well, not operating system, but you know, browsers and browser versions. When it comes to JavaScript, you can't just learn the syntax. You have to learn also about the DOM. You have to learn about different items that are attached to the global window object. So Eric Snyder says you're able to, you know, I wonder if I hit some type of threshold where I submitted too many bugs today. I don't know. I need to, we'll see. How can you do HTML without CSS? Your page will look like it was made before 2000. Yeah, like that's whenever I learned HTML, that CSS didn't even exist. So you could totally do you know, HTML and build a website without CSS. My son is doing it right now, and so actually I'll post the link inside here. So it's http jonathansampson.github.io/IamJohnAnthony. So this is the page that my son is currently learning how to build. He's 6 years old, and so far this is what he has. And so this page, if I'm mistaken, doesn't have any CSS on it, and it is going to look like a fairly old page. It's going to be fairly boring, but he's developing that understanding of HTML right now, because one of the things that you wind up running into is HTML is super, super powerful, especially whenever you consider the areas where people oftentimes don't explore. Well, the audio is actually pre-2000 as well, so you would actually have stuff like that. You know, people saying like, "Hi, welcome to my website." The only difference is you'd have to wait like 3 hours to download a 3 meg MP3 or something. And so when you look into HTML, you wind up having things like you have the base common tags that everyone knows about. You all know about, you know, the strong tag, the B tag, the I tag, the bold and italicized, the older ones, but now use, you know, strong and emphasized and that type of stuff. We have tables, we have bodies, we have paragraphs, anchors, links, all this type of stuff, images or IMG. But what you wind up with are areas in which people don't actually explore, like the ARIA labels, and starting to get into thinking about more than just what visual users see on your page. One of the things I'm doing with my son is whenever he loves to put images on his page. So every night when we sit down to go through and learn HTML, I ask him, what do you want to do today? Do you want to build lists? Do you want to write things on your page? Do you want to do sounds? And he always wants to put more pictures of Pokemon on his page. And so what I do is we go out, we find a picture, and he recalls, he knows exactly what the image is. He knows the image tag. And so inside Visual Studio Code, all he has to type is IMG and then hit tab. And Visual Studio Code will drop a template for the image element out there and place your cursor inside the source attribute value. And once we get past the source attribute value, we're into the alt attribute. And so what I do is I tell him I'll bring the picture up on the screen, and they're usually always animated GIFs. He really loves animated GIFs. And so there will be a picture of like Ninetales blowing fire or something, some Pokemon thing. And what I'll do is I'll tell him, all right, buddy, like, can you tell Daddy what you see? And, you know, he has to now think, this isn't just a picture of a Pokemon. You have to think in very descriptive terms. So this is Ninetales blowing fire. And so if you view the source of that page, you can actually see the alt tags that my son, a 6-year-old, is conceiving whenever he looks at these pictures. Because not every user is going to see the pictures. Some of them are going to, you know, they're going to have to process that mental image some other way. And so when you get into accessibility, you're getting into an area of HTML in particular where a lot of people just don't go. They learn the basics, they learn how to, you know, scratch out a basic page, but they don't learn about ARIA roles. They don't learn about, you know, the accessibility tree or anything like that. Yeah, so click the Pikachu, click his face. There's a couple things inside there. One thing that you can do to make accessibility much easier, and this is probably a good place to end, is, well, for one, if you learn about accessibility, if you truly learn about accessibility, you will not be, you know, looking for a job. You will have a job always. There are a lot of people who want to make their websites and their web applications truly accessible to non-sighted users. And so what we did inside recent builds of Edge, let me just jump back and share my desktop. We actually added, if you jump over to the DOM Explorer, we added this portion right here. So this is the accessibility tree. If we click on that, what this does is it tells you exactly what screen readers see. So when they come to the page, a screen reader is going to see this description here: San Francisco Bay Area News, Sports, Business, Entertainment, Classified, San Francisco, or SF Gate. The next item is going to be a group. And if you expand the group, there's a text box there with nothing in it. There's a group that says search, search, a button that says search. There's a heading that says subscribe at low intro rates. There's home, news, sports, business, entertainment, food, living, travel. If we go up to this subscribe at low interest rates, there's a link that says subscribe at low interest rates. Subscribe at low interest rates. You notice this doesn't really tell you what you're seeing. You know, if you have the navigator just reading to you what's on the screen, it says San Francisco Bay Area News, search, Saturday, August 20, 2016, subscribe at low interest rates. It's like, well, but what is that? Like, what exactly is going on right here? And so you'll find a lot of websites, they don't even quite have a good foundation in place. And a lot of this can really be greatly improved upon just by having basic things like title attribute, alt attributes, having good semantic markup on your page, so you don't just have divs everywhere. You actually use the appropriate types of elements. So you notice in here we have a text element inside of a link, inside of a heading. So they are doing some things very right here. But you notice the heading, all these headings are side by side, even though they're not related one to another. They're not inside section tags. They're not inside of an article tag or anything like that. And so it's not super well organized here. And so if you can figure that stuff out, then you will be doing very, very well. And you can do all of that just with HTML and becoming really great at that. So Extra Mania Gamer says, this is a really great feature. Does any other browser offer something similar? I don't think so, at least not to my knowledge. One of the things that we did, so with the most recent work on the, let me actually update my file here to say that we are at 2 minutes and 30 seconds talking about the accessibility tree. So whenever we decided, in this last year, people have been looking to us for a lot of updates in Microsoft Edge, and they've wanted to have big features and stuff like that done. But our primary focus, if you were to kind of think about density-wise, the most dense focus that we had was improving accessibility and making Edge one of the most accessible browsers that you can use. And so this isn't, we have a giant mural on the wall down the hallway that says a web for or the web works for everyone. We want the web to work for everybody. And so there's accessibility tools in other browsers, but I think as far as seeing the accessibility tree, we may be the only ones that have it built in. And so we've really been pushing on this to really achieve something great here. And so that's what has been our primary focus. And so now if you look at I think it is HTML5accessibility.com, you can see kind of the fruits of our labors there, where we really worked hard to achieve a truly accessible browser. And so right now, Edge 14 on Windows 10 is 100% accessible. So, and you look at like where IE was. So IE was 56%. Chrome is at presently 81 and Firefox at 89. And so this has been our focus to really, really like hammer on the accessibility and make sure that Edge is a truly accessible browser that is able to bring anyone to the internet and to create a web that works for everybody. And so we've been very pleased with this, very excited about it. And again, a lot of this stuff, you can make a lot of ground without having to learn, scripting or CSS or anything like that. It's just a matter of learning the HTML really, really well, like having a true innate sense about what goes where and what the relationships are to different structures inside the document. And so, Column, I would encourage you to just spend some time in the HTML5 spec. If you go to w3.org/tr/HTML5.1, that will take you to the HTML5.1 specification. And it's going to be a little intimidating. It's going to be a little foreign if this is not something that you're used to looking to. But I would definitely encourage you just to kind of page through the specification, have a look at what's inside here. You'll notice you'll get down to around section 4, and that's where the HTML elements begin. And so you can start reading about the individual HTML elements, their content model, which means what can you put inside of them. So you notice right here, this is the root element, the HTML element. It doesn't exist in any category. A content model, it means you can put a head and a body inside the HTML element. The head element should be followed by the body. So you can't do the HTML and then put a paragraph immediately inside there. That violates the content model. So I would start to just check out this stuff and really learn it really well. If you look at the body element, you can see it has a context, which is the opposite of the content model. The context says that it can be the second element in an HTML head. And so the specification will start to tell you exactly where you can put stuff. So I think that's a good place to probably, call it quits right there. And again, Column, I really hope I'm pronouncing your first name right. If I can ever do anything, if you want to take one of these weekends and we'll just sit down and go through an HTML tutorial, I'm more than happy to do that for a few hours. We can do it with JavaScript. You're going to sit down and just kind of learn some scripting, or even with CSS. CSS is pretty phenomenal technology to learn. So I'm more than happy to do what I can in that area to help everybody out there who is even remotely interested in web development to better understand what it is that makes the web run. Let's do one last question here. It looks like Jaska, I believe, had a question about the 237.30 mark, asking about the color picker, if I'm not mistaken. So it's great that it's built in. Was there any special reason why color picker, it's in the same place as accessibility icon and IE got removed? It's present in IE DevTools. I think the color picker got moved, actually. That's a good question. I remember it was in there and then it was removed. Actually, no, it's still there. Yeah, so the color picker is just to the left of that icon. So let me pull up right now. I'll show my desktop again. And we'll just jump in, look at the inspect element. And you notice the color picker is right here. So I'm going to call you C-Money until you tell me how to pronounce your name. So Calum, you have to show me how to pronounce that. But yeah, the color picker is right there. So it's so easy to I sit here for hours and hours and hours a day, and then you start to get tunnel vision. You start to just kind of focus in on one particular thing, and yeah, you can miss some other stuff that's just sitting there right in the face. If it had been a snake, it bit me. So anyway, I will. It's been a pleasure talking with everybody. Thank you for hanging out with me. Twice today. 5.5 hours of live debugging. Thank you for bringing your bugs to me. Thank you for bringing your slow and broken sites. This is truly a great experience. It's a lot of fun to talk with everybody, just kind of hang out, relax, and explore the web together. So awesome. So C-Money is going to post an audio file on Twitter at some point. That would be super helpful. There's actually a website that tells you how to pronounce certain names. Website. Pronounce names. Pronouncenames.com. So I'm going to do column. All right, I think this is it. The pronunciation for this is column. I don't know. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder if that's if any of those were even remotely close. So anyway, yep. Thank you all for hanging out. I will talk to you, I believe, possibly next weekend. So I'm probably going to be taking a short vacation here in a couple of weeks, and that will maybe or maybe not will be online during those weekends. But either way, you know where to find me most weekends. I'll be right here. Jonathan Sampson from the Microsoft Edge team. Thank you all for hanging out with me once again and helping me to make Edge greater today than it was yesterday. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.